Hey everybody, and welcome to another Chairman of the Board ranking video. This is where I take a look at the last 5 new to me board games that I've played and I rank them from my least favourite up to my most favourite. And I generally have a really good bunch of games here. Nothing here I disliked at all, so there's not going to be any scathing reviews here. But before I get started on these games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer. And if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. At number 5, I have Tussie Mussie, which is a lovely little kind of tableau building game as you're collecting these different flowers to try and combo them together and score in different ways. The game has a kind of I split you choose adjacent mechanism where you'll be presenting cards to your neighbours. One's going to go face up, one's going to go face down. Your opponent can choose which one they want, bearing in mind they cannot look at the face down one. So this is kind of a bluffing aspect to it. You know, have I put the card you really want face down, or is that the card I want and I want you to take this one, and so on. And the person presenting those cards will get the one that's remaining, so the one that hasn't been drafted by the player who chose that card. And these cards again will combo together in different ways, scoring you points based on different colours or symbols or icons. And even the position in which they were drafted. So again, face up cards will go in a different pile than the face down ones. And you're just trying to score as many points as you can by min-maxing those cards together. Very fast, very punchy, kind of a minimalist feeling game with very small scoring actually. But it's pleasant and I did enjoy it and would never really turn down a game. So I can see why this one's got a relatively good fan base. That is Tussie Mussie at number 5. At number 4, I have Fliptown, which is a flip and write style game with a Wild West theme. I do like the drafting system in this game where you are presented with 3 playing cards. One of those playing cards is going to contribute towards an ongoing poker hand. The better poker hands you can form means the more points you'll get. And the other 2 are going to add towards kind of the suit type or the value of the card. And you can use those kind of interchangeably in order to participate in all of these different mini games on your player sheet. These mini games vary a lot, such as being like a one-way track system, or being a push your luck little mini game, or this kind of dig deeper mini game where you can burrow down and unlock more victory points or end game scoring conditions. And I suppose the main part of the game is this kind of town system where you can add all these different, or kind of participate in all these different little games or kind of mini games in order to buff your ability to play the other games or to give you mitigation tools, this kind of thing. There's this other system as well where you have to be collecting gold and of course victory points in order to overcome the sheriff, because a lot of these different mini games will give you kind of a wanted reputation, and as long as your wanted market is kind of below this wild card, sheriff card, then you'll be fine. But if you run away, you can end up getting penalised quite heavily. So you do need to keep an eye on that and not let it get too far out of control. But I did like it a lot. I think it has a nice flow to it, some cool ideas. I think some of the games are significantly weaker than the others. You know, if there was some options to maybe improve some of them, I think that would have gone a long way. Particularly the little push your luck game, I think it's just a bit too swingy. But still, I am nitpicking here. And I also thought that the poker hand forming is a little bit too luck dependent, because you can have 4 of the perfect cards aiming towards that perfect poker hand, and then the last one just doesn't work for you because the player order didn't fall in your favour. So that could be a little bit frustrating at times, but I suppose you could frame that in being maybe you pushed your luck too far and you left yourself with no options. But still, it's a very solid example of a flip and write style game. Lots of combos, very well presented, good theming, and I did like that poker kind of card drafting system where you're actually using those player cards to dictate your actions. So that is Fliptown at number 4. At number 3, I have Path of Civilization. Now, this is an interesting take on the Civ genre because it's pretty breezy, it's very snappy, and for a full-blown Civ game, you can probably play it in around an hour, which is quite surprising and quite impressive. The game is pretty formulaic. We are going through this phase system, kind of climbing tracks, using a very small hand of cards to place them in these different locations, which will kind of increase your currency to buy new cards or increase your contribution to these end of round objectives or your military strength, or alternatively you can use those cards to again climb those tracks to buy new cards to play in future rounds. I think all the mechanisms here are pretty well harmonized, and you are constantly kind of improving your hand of cards to get more and more resources, but you cannot neglect other aspects of the game, such as your population track, because if you get loads of symbols but you don't have the population to actually harness those symbols, then you're going to be wasting your turn and being inefficient. Lots of variability through these leaders you can acquire, these different buildings you can acquire, technologies and so on. And all in all, I thought it was a very nice game. I thought that maybe the autonomy of the game doesn't feel super strong. It feels like you're kind of going through the motions. If you have enough currency at the right time, then maybe you'll buy this card. I think the long-term planning doesn't feel really strong, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because I think that a lot of these Civ-themed games sometimes can feel a little bit, not overwhelming, but a bit too cumbersome in how much onus they put on the players in terms of very meticulously planning everything out. This one, you can kind of wing it and do quite well, but if you really want to get to the nitty-gritty, you can actually see what all the upcoming objectives are and plan ahead if you want to. But if you don't do that, you'll probably still do fine. You might not win, but you'll do all right. So I've only played this one once so far. I liked it. I was quite impressed with the game system. I think it could improve with repeated plays. Lots of cards here to explore for variability. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what else the game can present me and if it can really win me over. Right now, I like it. Could I love it? Possibly. So that is Path of Civilization at number 3. At number 2, I have GIPF. Now, GIPF is the first game of the GIPF series of abstract strategy games. This one kind of feels a bit more traditional to a lot of the others. It doesn't feel quite as wacky, but this one you are essentially pushing these discs into this big grid, this kind of matrix. And when you're pushing something in from the edges, you are shifting everything else along. And the idea is that you are trying to create a row of 4 of your particular colour. If you do that, you will not only take those pieces back into your supply, but you'll also remove your opponent's pieces in that particular line. And it's kind of a game of attrition where you want to wear down your opponents with the winning condition of that if your opponent runs out of pieces to put onto the board, then they will lose. So it's not like there's a sudden death style system. It's more of a bleeding your opponent's dry feel to the game. Now, I do like the way that all these different lines interject with each other and interact and cross over each other. And it's one of those games where you need to be hyper vigilant, not to let very silly mistakes kind of bite you in the ass, really, because it's very easy to let things slide and not quite see what's going on, and then your opponent will come in with a move, take a bunch of your pieces off the board, and you're like, how did I not see that? But still, I did like this one. Again, I've not played it as much as I've played some of the other ones, but I'm looking forward to trying it some more to see if it really holds up. Again, it does feel a little bit drier than some of the others, maybe a bit slower, a bit longer, but the gameplay is fun and there is some potential to make some cool moves here. And again, I do like that victory condition. So that is GIPF at number 2. And finally, at number 1, I have another game from the GIPF series. This is PÜNCT. Now, PÜNCT is probably the wackiest of the bunch that I've played so far. It's a game where you have this hexagonal board, and throughout the game you are going to be placing these pretty weird shaped pieces onto this board with the aim of trying to connect 2 opposite sides of the board together. As soon as you can do that with these pieces by connecting a perfect line, then you will win the game immediately. Now, the game does come with some pretty cool twists where you can actually move your pieces on top of your opponent's pieces, as long as a particular spot on the piece will remain on top of one of yours. And you can use that to kind of cut lines and break the line of your opponent's piece with the aim of trying to extend yours at the same time. Trying to think outside the box. Maybe your opponent cuts you off in this direction, so you'll end up going this direction instead. It can become very thinky. Again, silly mistakes can come back and haunt you, but still it's pretty rapid and it has that addictive quality where you want to constantly patch over the mistakes you've made in the past and utilize these pieces to the best of your ability, not only to, of course, spread your influence on the board, but to try and create platforms for your own pieces or overlap your opponent's pieces as well. So I think as a game you need to play to really understand. I think some people will bounce off of it, I think some people will really love it, and that seems to be the impression that I've got from reading reviews on this one. I think people will say it's maybe not quite abstract strategy enough, it feels a little bit too quirky to fit with the rest of the series, but I like that, it definitely feels different. So that is PÜNCT at number 1. So there we have it, that concludes this video. Hopefully you have enjoyed it, as I have playing all of these games really. They're very high quality bunch of games in this particular session. Now if you have enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel too. And for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.